Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by my channel. Definitely appreciate taking time out of your day to pay me a visit. It's been a really hot minute since I've done a lure painting video. I know I didn't do one last year, so it's been probably close to 2 years since I put out a lure painting video, but I certainly have been painting plenty of lures. Recording a video while painting a lure is just not easy. I normally am wearing a full face mask when I'm doing this, something that looks like this. It's supposed to be good for your health, so between that and the fan noise, just trying to record audio for these videos it's challenging. So yeah, anyway, I decided we'll go ahead and switch things up and do a video for lure painting. Just because, for a few different reasons, I felt like doing it, but I just have a new pattern that my buddy Mike over at Tricky Sticks wanted me to paint up. I think it's called Lime Ice. I forget what it's a Reaction Innovations color. I did a mock-up on a spook last night, and I think it turned out really nice. I don't really do these transparent colors all that much. It's really, really nice, so that's what we're going to be aiming for, though. He gave me a larger swim bait to do it on, so that's what I'm going to focus on this video is, to show you how to do it on this swim bait. I'm not sure which swim bait this is exactly. I know he got this off of Alternative Lures. I'll try to find the link and throw it down in the description, but something I'm not going to include in the video is me doing this on a popper as well. Normally when I'm painting, I am not painting one lure at a time. I am all about efficiency. I am painting at least for typically eight lures in the same pattern at the same time. So yeah, this video will show you how to do it on a swim bait. I'll try to show you the finished popper at the end of the video if I remember. But with that said, let's go ahead and just jump right into things. Something that I've started doing this year that I've found that helps out the clear coating process quite a bit. And I read about this online quite often, and I thought it was crazy, not really necessary, but I found that it does help. And that's rubbing the lures down in rubbing alcohol. It's the same reason why you wear a glove for when you're handling lures. I only use one glove because I only use one hand to handle the lure. But yeah, you want to avoid getting any oils or contaminants on the lures. So the rubbing alcohol is supposed to take all of that off. So just take a rag and then just rub them on down. Go ahead and put this onto our helping hands. Okay. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is paint the head with a pearl silver. Pearl, I've never actually seen this pattern in person. From what I could tell, it was like a white or a pearl, and I actually, when I did a test run of this last night, I painted one in white and one in pearl, and they are indistinguishable. I think that really only shows up when you actually have like a white base coat or like a black base coat, so if you don't have pearl silver and you got pearl white, the results are going to be pretty much the same. I think after about 4 years, maybe 5 years of painting lures, I finally killed off this pearl silver. Now, I'm doing the poppers first to just kind of get my hands dialed in for this painting tonight. I already ran out of that pearl silver. Thankfully, I've got a spare ready to go. All right, so yeah, this pattern, it kind of has the silver kind of go back to the gill plate and then kind of taper off. And then in all the photos I saw, it looks like the kind of the underbelly has that just very light, sparse silver to it. So normally when I'm doing this kind of a only to the gill plate and it kind of tapers off, you want to kind of do it at an angle. You don't want to do it straight on, especially when you're doing when you don't have a base coat. I found that if you're just painting it straight on, it's very easy to have it pool up and start running, and that's just a quick way to ruin the lure. So kind of at an angle like this. I'm going to try to do this to make sure that I actually get this in the camera. And I'm going to just kind of very lightly on the trigger, just kind of work it back. I'm normally doing like circle motions when I'm doing this. Your trigger action is just very faint. You know, if this is your first time ever painting, just get a chunk of wood and just kind of practice where that trigger finger is going to be, and you'll learn your airbrush real quick. I'm using an Iwata Eclipse HPCS. The first 2 years or 3 years of painting lures, I used an Iwata Neo, and I broke 3 of those. 3 of those cost the same as one of these, and I've owned this thing for 2 years, and I've never had an issue with it. Don't cheap out on an airbrush. If you really want to dive into this, make sure you get, really I'd recommend this Eclipse HP CS. It's phenomenal. So yeah, we're just working our way back, and that's kind of what we're looking at there for that one side. We'll just repeat it on this other side. All right, so we got our 2 cheekbones, and then again, I'm going to very, very lightly do the bottom. I'm going to do it a little bit heavy towards the mouth area, but then the bottom just very, very lightly and kind of far away from the bait. Just give it that silver look to it. You want to still be able to see through it, but you can definitely tell that there's a little bit of silver down there now. Darken up those cheekbones a little bit. Just a little bit up top. That top's going to get some violet on it, so I'm not too concerned about that. So, all right, we're going to call it good with that pearl silver and move on. So if anyone's curious how I clean my brush in between paint colors, I've got this water bottle, squirt a little bit in there, rinse it 2 or 3 times, and then you take an old rag, cram it on in there, and just work it around, and then give it another 2 or 3 rinses, and just have a little bit of water in there, and then spray it out into your well. This cup has seen a lot of use. Man, that's still my original solo cup from 5 years ago. So something that I kind of have stopped doing is I don't heat set my lures anymore unless I'm doing a lot of layers within a very short time. Then I'll heat set it with a heat gun or a hair dryer. But for the most of my lures nowadays that I'm painting, by the time that I'm done painting, cleaning out the airbrush, things like that. And then again, most important note about this, I really only paint lures in the winter where the humidity is super low. That paint just dries out real fast, and I don't really have to worry about heat setting. You can still heat set. I just have found that I don't really need to for the most part. So I just move straight on into painting the next color, which is going to be a pearl lime. And again, this one, it's a Cretex is the maker. The Cretex pearl colors I really like. For anything that's not pearl, I've moved over to golden high flow for almost all my other main colors, like opaque colors. I've really been disappointed in Cretex lately. I've switched over to golden for almost all my other colors about a year ago, and just been blown away by how consistently good it is. You don't have to reduce the golden high flows. You really kind of have to screw around with Cretex colors with some of their colors, but the pearl colors I can always just shoot straight and never have an issue with. So here's one other variation real quick that I'll show you all. So again, I painted 4 spooks last night to kind of figure out how I wanted to do this color. So over here, I guess this one is the pearl lime green. And this one is a fluorescent yellow. I don't know that they actually show up that much of a difference on the camera, but this fluorescent just doesn't really pop out nearly as much as this pearlized lime green. Yeah, pearl lime, or not? Yeah, pearl lime. So that's what I ended up deciding on. I think the fluorescent just doesn't work as well. I bought this fluorescent a few years ago thinking that would be a great color, but anytime I use it, I'm just really not that impressed. Alright, so this pearl lime, it really only kind of goes about halfway, maybe 40% down the side of the lure. So again, to kind of get that gradient kind of transition, I don't do it straight from the side like this. I'm normally always doing a top down and sort of angled approach. And again, very kind of light on the trigger. So we're going to start at the head, just kind of very gently on the trigger, go back and forth to get that spine. And then let off the trigger, kind of go at the side here, and do a top down approach. The other side. It's looking pretty good. I think I'm going to darken up that spine just a little bit more. That kind of transitions nicely. Okay, we'll call it done with the pearl lime. Okay, next up we got the head that we're going to be doing here, or the top of the head, I suppose I should say. For that, I'm going to be using a Wicked, this is a Cretex Wicked color, just Wicked Detail Violet. I have not bought a Golden High Flow version of Violet yet. It's the only reason I'm using this. This stuff clogs up my air gun real quick. Probably should reduce it. I just find reducing color such an annoyance, such an inconvenience. I just don't bother with it. For such a small section like this, it shouldn't really be a problem. Knock on wood. So part of making sure that this doesn't clog up, I really am only going to be putting in like 1 or 2 drops. I will refill that if I need to. Okay, so again for this violet head, it's really just on the front top of his head. It doesn't really go down the sides all that much, and then it goes down to the nose. And for anyone that's curious, I don't really fine tune any of my airbrushing stuff. I keep things very consistent. My air pressure, I want to say, is about 30 psi. I try to keep it on the higher side, again, to prevent those clogs. And I find that I can still do enough detail. I don't do fine detail stuff on my lures. I'm not an artist in that regard. I paint lures that want to get fished. I don't want them to sit on the display case. Not knocking it for the people that do that. Just for me, I want to be able to throw these lures. And for me, if something is super, super detailed, like putting in a little fin or something like that, I don't think a fish is going to care about that unless you're in super, super clear water, which I'm generally not fishing. So not something I'm overly concerned about. So anyway, we're going to just go ahead and just very softly start doing the head, not focusing on one area in particular, just kind of working it back and forth. Give it props. I absolutely love that violet color. Man, that wicked color is just wicked. So I do like darkening that up, and it does look like it gets pretty dark, so that's where I'm going to really lay into the trigger. But again, you want to make sure you're working that back and forth. You're going to see that it starts getting real wet. You want to make sure that it doesn't get to the point where it pools, and then we'll start running, because that's going to completely ruin that airbrush look. So back off, give it like 10-15 seconds to dry if you need to. Or if you want to, run a heat gun on it real quick. But just like that, I think we got what we're looking for. Bring that back just a little bit more, I think. Oh, we're going to call it good enough because this thing's already clogged. Good enough. I think that looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead and clean this airbrush out and get ready for the last color. Okay, and to round out the colors, we've got just like a little bit of undercut gill plate red that we need to do. And again, for that, I've just got a Wicked Colors, Wicked Crimson that we're going to do. Again, this is another Wicked color that just clogs up this airbrush a lot. But again, if you do just 1 or 2 dabbles, typically is fine. So for a very thin gill plate sort of thing, this is where I kind of practice my lines and really make sure I got that trigger finger dialed in to make sure I got my lines straight. I can kind of find what distance I'm going to want to be from that lure while I'm doing this. Kind of just like that. And again, it's always good to have some lures that you don't really necessarily care about to test it on. Well, it did not work out very well on these poppers, so you can kind of tell the way that this airbrush is bubbling that it's clogged. So before I ruin Mike's lure, I'm going to tear this whole thing apart, give it a good deep clean, because I don't want to screw that up, and I might actually try to make a template real quick. Or not a template, a stencil. to just do that a little bit cleaner. So we'll go do that real quick. Well, we're going to try to make a stencil real quick. Over the years, when I make stencils, I either use cardboard or sometimes paper. Most of the time, Backwater Outfitters, which is one of the places I go to get lure blanks, they include little business cards, which is fantastic for making stencils. It's thick enough where it's not going to rip too easily, and it's flexible enough to be able to chop up and hold up against the lure. I'm going to use an X-Acto knife and just kind of cut a very thin and short kind of slit that we'll be able to try to get a clean gill plate line on this. So again, I'm not a very precision person. I'm going to just eyeball this and see how it goes. Let's see how that little slit will do. You know what? I think that's going to work out just fine. I'm going to chop this in half to make it fit just a little bit nicer. Now, it's a little cockeyed, but that'll work. It's no Picasso, but I think that'll just be fine. Mike can charge me just a little bit more on the rods that we're going to be trading if he's not a fan. Forgot the camera wasn't going, but we went ahead and just painted on some black eyes. That's really rough looking, but when you don't have specialty eyes, that's what you kind of got to work with. But I think that might look a little nicer once we get the clear coat on it. Go ahead and pop the eyeballs on these poppers and then move on to the clear coat. So now that we got the eyeballs on and painted on, normally I give these about 20 to 30 minutes for the super glue to dry and the paint to completely dry. So we're going to go take a break for about 20-30 minutes, and then we'll be back to put on the clear coat. Alright, so for clear coating, I recently made the switch over to using Alumilite. This is a UV based, I don't know if you consider it an epoxy or a resin or what, but I've used a lot of different things over the years. I like Alumilite. It has a pretty good finish once it's done. Really, the nice thing about these UV resins, it only takes about, I leave it in the curing box for about 2 hours. Some people say that it's done in an hour, but with the box I have, it typically is about 2 hours. for that stuff to get hard. So that's what we're going to go ahead and use. I'm not going to be doing any talking while I clear coat this, because I definitely have to have my face mask respirator on for this stuff, as you can tell from all these big warning signs over here. So it is something you do want to have the proper ventilation with that fan going, and a respirator. And I just brush it on. This is only a quarter-pound bottle. I want to get a 2-pound bottle once they're back in stock, so I can dip these lures. You can't dip a swim bait. You can still paint it on just using really cheap paint brushes. But for the non-jointed lures, you can dip it, which makes things go so much faster. I'm really not a fan of painting anything on. That's part of why I don't use epoxy. I still use epoxy occasionally, but Aluminite's been my go-to the last few months. So one of the nice things about Aluminite, it's a really thin sort of clear coat. So with like epoxy, I normally would like wrap a rubber band around that joint, but with how thin the Aluminite is, I found that you don't really need to deal with it. The only thing about this lure is I don't have the lips, and it has this screw down here, so you can change out that joint if you ever need to. So I'm going to leave that all accessible, so you just kind of paint around it with the Aluminite. It's one of the again, just the really nice things about Aluminite compared to like a 2-part epoxy, whether it's DevCon or BSI. Whenever I use an epoxy, it just always seems to be so thick that it can make for really challenging, intricate sort of work around these types of joints. Still not really quite happy about the way that gill bleed turned out, but we'll just have to go with it, kind of live with it. So when I get close to this joint, I'm just doing really thin, long brush strokes to not get it too heavy around that area. This side doesn't matter too much since that's where the stationary joint is. Really, you want to make sure that there's enough of a gap where that clear coat's not going to stick the two joints together. You might be able to see I got a little too close, and that's starting to join up right there. You just kind of poke it with your paintbrush, and that will pop it. And we'll just start doing a very, very thin coat on this rear tail piece. This is where you want to make sure that you don't get it in that joint, since that's the articulation point. One thing about these transparent lures, it can be really difficult to see the areas that you've actually clear coated, and which areas you haven't hit. Holding it at an angle like this will really help you make you see any spots that you missed, or might have any dips or air bubbles or something like that to just kind of go over. Alright, so with this guy, This thing has just a huge articulation range. So, I'm going to just give it a very gentle brushing here in the middle. And again, really what you want to do is make sure that your alligator clips are like at full tilt, if you will. You want to kind of adjust those. You can see that this top one is kind of binding. You got a bigger gap down here than you do up here. You want to try to manipulate that so it's even, so that when it dries, it's not going to have it's not going to bridge the gap. And even if it does, if it's real thin, you can just take an X-Acto knife and kind of clean it up. It's not necessarily the end of the world. But I just want to give this one more quick once over, hit any spots that I might have missed. And then the last thing, I do a very, very quick pass with a heat gun or a hair dryer, just to pop any air bubbles. Very, very quick when you're using this Alumilite. It's a very thin viscosity, and you just don't need to really be on it all that long, because it will make it runny, and you don't want it to pull up on the bait at all. So I'm going to just adjust this a little bit more to make sure that. So I'm going to go put this in the box and just doing a double check that gap is about as good as it's going to get. Let's move this on over to our box. We'll come back to that about 2 hours later.
All right, well, here's our finished product after the clear coat dried. I really like this pattern. Just that translucent look to it is just really nice. I don't have the tail for this, and I don't have the lip for it. I'm gonna just give this to Mike, and he'll get to deal with those. But yeah, those poppers turned out real nice as well. I definitely prefer having, real eyeballs on those rather than just the painted on black. But you know what? Once that clear coat went on there, I don't actually mind that painted black eye as much. So anyway, hopefully you all found this somewhat entertaining, and might even have given you a pattern to try and go paint. So hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next video.